Hi, I'm Balaji Chippada and welcome back to my channel. In continuation of our Python series for data science, in this video, let's learn everything about for loops. Let's take an example. You have a list in which there are 100 elements and you want to access every element in the list. So how would you do it? Let me know in the comment section below. First method is brute force method, in which you can access each and every element using the index, list 1 of 0, list 1 of 2, list 1 of 3, and you write until list 1 of 100. You access all the elements. Is it efficient? No. Is it easy? Might be, but it will take a long time to access all the elements, right? Is there a better way of doing it? Yes. That is where for loops comes into picture. For loops are used to iterate over a sequence of elements. So without any delay, let's get into the coding part to understand the syntax and real-time examples on how you can implement for loops. First, let's understand the syntax of for loop. We say for I in iterable, execute this piece of code. Okay, now let's break it down into multiple segments. So what is for? For is a keyword and this signifies the start of for loop. Okay, and then we have in is also a keyword. If you are not familiar with keywords, please do watch our first video, keywords and identifiers. I will link it in the top right corner. And then we have I is an iterable in which it takes on the value of each item in the iterable during each iteration. During each iteration is important here. I will explain that in detail. And iterable is a sequence or iterable object that is being looped over. It could be either list, tuple, string. It could be anything that is iterable, etc. Okay, and once it is done, you execute the piece of code inside it, and once the code is executed, it will go back for the for loop again for the next iterable. I hope that is clear. Now let's understand the difference between while loop and for loop. In the last video we learned about while loops, right? How would you initialize a while loop? Initially we do initialize a counter equal to 1, while counter greater than or equal to less than or equal to 5, print high, and then increase the counter plus equal to 1. Okay, if you see, it is similar to the while loop, but we are not increasing the counter explicitly. By default, for loop will increase the counter. So what happens in this scenario? You don't often run into the scenario where you will execute your loop indefinitely. Now let's get into the example part. Here I have a variable called fruits in which I store a list of 3 elements: apple, banana and cherry, and I want to access each and every element inside this list. So I will initialize a for loop for I in fruits, print I. So let's execute this and understand the output. So for the first time, the value I holds apple and it is printing apple. And in this, once it is printed apple, it will go back to here and it will get the next element inside the iterable, which is banana, and it will print banana. And again, it will go back to the same for loop and it will check for the last element cherry and it will print cherry. Once it reaches the last element, it will exit the loop. That's how for loop works. Here I don't need to give indentations as well. Even if I do like this, it will work, but indentations are mandatory and it is an industry standard to follow 4 spaces. Now what if I don't give indentations at all, but I start the print in the next line without indentations like this? Will it work? No, because it doesn't recognize I, because it is not inside the for loop. So indentations are mandatory while you are doing for loops. You need to make sure each piece of cell that you are writing inside for loop is having a proper indentation. Now we have a range function. This is an important function. Now let's understand. What if I want to generate numbers from 0 to 100? So do I need to initialize a list of elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up until 100? No, that is where range function comes into picture. So range function, what it will does is it will generate a sequence of numbers using a range. So we have range, start, stop, and step size. So this will be your start index, and we have the end index, stop index, and we have the step size. By default, if you don't mention the step size, it is treated as 1, and we will understand the step size in detail as well. Just wait a bit. And if you give only one element inside range, that will be treated as a stop index, and by default the step size is 1 and start index is 0. And one more important aspect of range function is range function does not store all the values in the memory at a single time. At every iteration, it will generate the number. So it is very efficient to use range functions rather than using a hard-coded values. Now let's take an example. So for I in range of 5, print I. So what does this mean? Range of 5. Because I specified only one element, the start index is 0 and end index is 5 and step size is 1. When you specify a range of 5, it will get you the values up until the end index minus 1. End minus 1. So it is 4. So I get values from 0. Because step size is 1, the next element is 1, and the next element is 2, next element is 3, and 4. It will not include the end index value. Is that clear? So for every iteration, we have I as 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Execute this. We get the output 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's take this example, range of 0, 20, and 5. So we have start index as 0, start equal to 0, end equal to 20, step equal to 5. So what does this mean? Your first iteration, the value is 0, and in the second iteration, the value is 0 plus 5. As I mentioned before, end index is not included. The value of end index minus 1 is the maximum limit. So the value here will be 19. And the next element in the sequence would be 0 plus 5 plus 5. And the next element in the sequence would be 0 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. Likewise, we will go. The first element is 0, second element is 5, third element is 10, 15, and the next element is 20. Now, because value 20 is outside your end index, this will not be included. So in your iteration, you will get these four values, which is 0, 5, 10, and 15. If you specify the start index as 0 and index as 20 and step size of 5. I hope that is clear. So let's execute this. So I get 0, 5, 10, and 15. Now, in the initial example, we understood what the output from this for loop, right? Now, is there any other way that I can get this using range function? Yes, that is where we utilize the range function along with the length function that is available for lists. So first understand the length of fruits. Fruits is a variable in which we are holding 3 elements inside a list. So the length is 3 and we are saying range of 3. What does range of 3 means? Range of 3. As I mentioned before, by default start index is 0 and step size is 1 and end is 3 and end element is not included. So the value is 0, 2 and we have the step size as 1. So these are the 3 values that you will get from this range of length of fruits. And these will be acting as an index and we access the elements of the list using these indexes. If I execute this, now let me execute print index as well so that it will be easy for you to visualize. So initially the index is 0 and we are accessing fruits of 0, which is the value apple. And in the second iteration, we have index as 1 and we are accessing fruits of 1, which is banana. And third index, we have 2 and fruits of 2, which is cherry. So the same output, we got it by using a range function combined with the length of the list. Here in this code, we are accessing the elements directly using for loop. And here we are accessing the elements by using index. Is there any other way or any other function that can merge both of these things? Yes, that is where enumerate function comes into picture. I'm saying for index comma value in enumerate of fruits. Now let's understand this. What does enumerate returns? Enumerate is a function which will return you two values. One is index and the value as well. So let's take this example. Our list apple, banana, and cherry, and index as 0, 1, and 2. In the first iteration, the index will be returned as 0, and because the value at index 0 is apple, it will return apple. and we are saving these two values inside two parameters called index and value. Because we are having two elements, we are saving those inside these two parameters. Hope that is clear. And then we are printing, and in the second iteration you get 1 and banana. So this is what enumerate gives us. Let's execute this, and we got the output index 0 and value apple, index 1 value banana, and index 2 value cherry. Now, can we do for loops with strings? Yes. So let's say I have a string in which the element is hello and it is saved under greetings variable. And if I say for letter in greeting print letter, it will iterate through each and every element inside a string. HELLO. Just like if else, we can use else block inside for as well. Once the for loop is done, it will go to the else condition. It will execute the piece of code inside else condition. So we'll take the same example. So first we are iterating through all the elements inside the fruits parameter and printing the fruits. And once this for loop is exited, then it will go to the else block and it will print this statement. If you have any queries so far in this session, please let me know in the comment section below. I will reply to each and every one of you. If else condition inside a for loop. In the previous video, we learned if else conditions, right? So we can utilize that inside a for loop as well. Now let's take an example. I have a numbers parameter in which I have a list of values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I want to check if any of these numbers are even numbers or odd numbers. So how would I do it? So here for number in numbers, okay, we are initializing a for loop, and number holds each and every number at every iteration. And make sure you are following the indentations here. If number %2 and the remainder is 0, that means it's an even number. I'm saying print. If it is not 0, then print odd by using if else condition, and I get the output. 1 is even odd, 2 is even, 3 is odd, 4 is even, 5 is odd. So likewise, you can utilize the previous topics that we learned inside for loop as well. If you remember our previous example in which we would want to grade the student based upon the percentage that they received by using if else conditions and elif conditions, I rephrased that example a little bit so that it will be a little bit complex, but I will explain that in detail. So let's understand the data structure first. So I have a variable called students, and it is a list variable, and inside list I have multiple dictionaries, and inside each dictionary I have the student name and the percentage as the key value pairs. So I have student Alice, Bob, Charlie, David, Eva, and their percentage as 85, 92, 78, 95, and 88. Now my task is to check all the students percentage values and assign them a category. Either it could be excellent, good, average, or below average based on the percentage value. So how would I do it? First, I am iterating through all the students in my students list, and I am accessing the value of the name using the dictionary assignment and saving it inside the name parameter, and I'm accessing the percentage and saving it inside percentage. Now I want to check if my percentage is greater than 90, assign or create a variable called category and give a value excellent. Else if the percentage is not greater than 90, if it is between 80 and 90, assign them good, and if it is between 70 and 80, assign them average. If any of these conditions are not met, assign them below average, and then print the name which we got it from here, and the percentage which we got it from here, and the category which we assigned based on if conditions. I hope that is clear. And for every iteration, we are checking all of these values for every student and then printing out the output. Now execute this. You see, Alice percentage is 85 and category is good. Bob's percentage is 92 and category is excellent. Charlie's percentage is 78 and category is average. So we utilize the concepts of for loop, dictionaries, lists, and else if else conditions inside a single task, and we execute this task with ease. Now the next example, let's say I want to print prime numbers between two given numbers, starting from the number 20 and ending from 50. So what are prime numbers? Prime numbers are basically the numbers which are divisible by themselves but not with any other number. So we would have to check all of those things, right? So if I have to first get all the numbers between 20 and 30, I would have to use range function, right? So I will say start with 20 and end with 50 and step size 1. But if I use like this, the last number would be 49 as I mentioned before and index minus 1. But I also want to check for the value 50 as well. So what I would do is I would add a value plus 1 to the end index. So my range function would look like this, range 20 and 51. So I get all the values from 20, 21, 22 up until 50 as well at every iteration. Now, so this is what this line does. At every iteration, get all me the values between 20 and 50. Okay. Now the second is if number greater than 1. This is like a sanity check. From the common sense, we could see that if the numbers are between 20 and 50, all of these numbers are greater than 1. But why are we even doing this? We technically don't need to do this, but it is a sanity check. After that, I'm creating a flag called is prime, and now I want to check whether the given number is a prime number or not. So how would you check it? So let's take this example. At the initial iteration, you get the value as 20, right? So how would you check whether it's a prime number or not? So you would have to check for all the numbers below this number whether it is divisible by 20 or not. So I would have to initialize a range function in which I get all the values up until 20. So I have from this output what I will get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up until 20. If any of these numbers are divisible by 20, that means it is not a prime number. If it is not, it's a prime number. You agree with me? Yes. Now let's understand all of this logic in detail with code. Initially, we started a for loop in the range function of start index and end index plus 1. So we have all the values from 20 to 50, and we are checking for a sanity check if number is greater than 1, creating a variable called is prime equal to true, and creating one more for loop inside a for loop, and we used a range function starting from 2 to the number, and we get all the values. And for each number, if it is divisible and if the remainder is 0, that means prime number is it is not a prime number, and we change the flag to the false. And if it is not a prime number, then you don't need to continue your iteration, right? So why are we using break? So we will understand break in detail in the next video, but I want to explain you guys how powerful it is to use a break. Even though you don't need to use a break here, but I will explain. Here, let's say we have 2 and 20, the range. So you have elements 2, 3, 4 up until 20. In the if condition, if the number is divisible and it is returning as 0, we are giving as false. That means if the number 20 is divisible by any other number, it is not a prime number at all. So initially we have the element as 2, and if 20 divided by 2 equal to 0, it is not a prime number, right? Then what is the need of checking for other numbers in the range function? You don't need it, right? It's a waste of computation power. So that is why we use break. If this number is not a prime number, or if it is divisible by any other number, then at that moment exit this for loop, and because this is a nested for loop, it will go back to this position here again, and it will increase the number to 21, and will repeat the same loop again and again. And if it is not breaking in this one, it will print, if it is a prime number, it will print prime number. With that, we conclude for loops, guys. In this video, we have learned a lot and everything about for loops, like where we can use for loops, what is the syntax, how we can mix data types in for loops, how we can use if else conditions inside for loop, and how we can use nested for loops as well. And we also tackled two real life examples of how you can use for loops to get the tasks done. Hopefully you learned something new in this video, and I made these topics very simpler for you to understand. So if you are liking what you're watching, please do subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified daily. We'll meet you in the next video. Bye bye.